I woke up like I always did. Same alarm sound cutting through the quiet. Same ceiling above me. Same half second of confusion before remembering exactly who I was and what I had to do that day. Nothing was wrong. That's what made it unsettling. No crisis, no emergency, no reason to panic. And yet, I didn't move. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, letting the morning sit with me longer than usual. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Notifications already coming in. Emails, messages, reminders, proof that the day had started whether I was ready or not. Normally, I'd grab my phone immediately, scroll for a few minutes, then jump straight into autopilot. But that morning, something felt off. Not dramatic, not emotional, just quiet. Heavy in a way I couldn't really explain. And in that silence, a thought slipped in before I could distract myself. What am I doing? It wasn't a breakdown. It wasn't panic. It was an honest question. One I'd avoided for a long time by staying busy. Because as long as you're busy, you don't have to think too hard about where you're actually going. I eventually got up and went through the routine. Showered, got dressed, made coffee. Everything felt familiar, almost too familiar. Like I'd done it 1,000 times before without really being present for any of it. My body knew the steps better than my mind did. That's when it hit me. I could live my entire life like this on autopilot. The thought scared me more than anything else had in a long time. I wasn't unhappy. That's the part that confused me. I didn't hate my life. I wasn't miserable. And because of that, I'd convinced myself I had no reason to question it. Like dissatisfaction only counts if you're suffering. Like feeling fine means you're doing something right. But laying there, getting ready for another day that looked exactly like the one before it, I realized something was missing. Not excitement, not happiness, direction. Days were blending together, weeks disappearing without leaving much behind. I wasn't moving toward anything. I was just maintaining, keeping things afloat, doing what was expected. And the scariest part was how easy it would be to keep doing that forever. I started thinking about time in a way I hadn't before. Not in big dramatic chunks, but in quiet moments. Mornings, evenings. The in-between parts of the day that add up without you noticing. And I wondered how many of those moments I'd already let pass without being present for them. That morning didn't come with answers. It just came with awareness. And once I had that, I couldn't unfeel it. I went about my day like normal, but everything felt slightly out of focus. Like I was seeing my life from a step back for the first time. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment things started to change. Not because I did anything different, but because I finally noticed what I'd been ignoring. I woke up that day and realized something wasn't right. After that morning, I couldn't stop noticing things. Nothing in my life had changed on the surface. Same responsibilities, same schedule, same expectations. But once that question entered my head, it followed me everywhere. Every task, every conversation, every day started to feel slightly heavier. Like I was carrying an awareness I didn't have before. I started seeing how much of my life was run on repeat. Wake up, get ready, show up, do what needs to be done, come home tired. Distract myself until it's time to sleep. Repeat. It wasn't chaos, it wasn't failure, it was stability. And that's why it was so easy to justify. Stability sounds like success when you're younger. No one warns you that it can slowly turn into a cage. I noticed how often I was counting down time, waiting for breaks in the day, waiting for the weekend, waiting for vacations like they were oxygen. When the best part of your week is when your life pauses, that should mean something. But instead of listening to that feeling, I brushed it off. That's what everyone does, right? The more I paid attention, the more I realized how normalized this mindset is. People bond over being exhausted, over being busy, over getting through the day. It's almost a badge of honor. If you question it, you're seen as ungrateful or unrealistic. So I stayed quiet. At night, I'd sit there scrolling, not even enjoying what I was looking at, just consuming noise so I didn't have to sit with my own thoughts. Watching other people live in ways that felt intentional, traveling, creating, building things that mattered to them. And instead of feeling inspired, I felt disconnected, like I was watching life happen through a screen. That's when I realized I wasn't tired because I was doing too much. I was tired because none of it felt like it was moving my life forward. Routine had become a shield. As long as my days were full, I didn't have to ask hard questions. As long as I was busy, I didn't have to confront the feeling that I was drifting. But every once in a while, early mornings, late nights, that feeling would come back. Is this it? Wasting your life doesn't feel reckless. It feels reasonable. It feels like being responsible. It feels like choosing the safe option so many times that you forget it was ever a choice at all. And because nothing is technically wrong, you convince yourself there's no reason to change. But time doesn't wait for clarity. The more I thought about it, the more unsettling it became. I realized how easily years could pass like this, how comfortable routines can slowly erase urgency, how you can wake up one day and realize you've been surviving instead of living and not know exactly when it started. Once I saw that clearly, I couldn't go back to sleep. That feeling didn't fade with time. If anything, it got louder. Not in a panicked way, more like a constant presence in the background. I could still function, still show up, still get through the day. But there was always this underlying tension, like I was ignoring something important, like I was postponing a conversation with myself that needed to happen. I started noticing how often I made decisions based on comfort instead of intention. How often I chose what was familiar over what felt right. And I realized that fear didn't show up as terror. It showed up as logic, as excuses that sounded responsible. You're being dramatic. This is just a phase. You can figure it out later. Later became a dangerous word. Because later feels safe. Later doesn't require action. Later lets you stay exactly where you are while convincing yourself you're still moving forward. And I had been using it for years without realizing it. What scared me most wasn't failing at something new. It was the idea of looking back and realizing I never really tried. That I let fear dress itself up as practicality and make my decisions for me. That I mistook stability for fulfillment simply because it was familiar. I paid attention to how I felt during the day. Not just what I was doing, but how it affected me. I noticed how drained I felt by the end of each day, even when nothing particularly hard had happened. How my energy was being spent just maintaining a life I wasn't excited about. That kind of exhaustion doesn't show up on the outside. You can look fine, function fine, even succeed. But inside, you feel disconnected from your own life, like you're playing a role instead of living it. I realized that no one was coming to interrupt this pattern for me. There was no deadline, no warning sign, no moment where someone would tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, this isn't it. If I kept going, it would just keep going, with or without my awareness. That's when the fear shifted. It stopped being about what might happen if I changed, and started being about what would happen if I didn't. About how quietly time could pass while I waited for the perfect moment. About how easy it is to trade years of your life for comfort without even noticing. I didn't have a plan yet. I didn't know what the alternative looked like. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep ignoring that feeling. Because the longer I did, the more I was choosing drift over direction. And that choice was starting to scare me more than uncertainty ever could. Nothing changed overnight. There wasn't a dramatic turning point where everything suddenly made sense. No big announcement, no clean break, just a slow shift in how I saw my own life. Once that happened, it became impossible to go back to living on autopilot without noticing it. I started understanding that awareness is uncomfortable for a reason. It forces you to confront the gap between the life you're living and the life you actually want. And most people don't avoid change because they're lazy. They avoid it because that gap is hard to look at. I thought a lot about time, about how patient it is, how it doesn't rush you or pressure you, it just keeps moving forward quietly. You don't feel it passing in the moment. You only notice it when you look back and realize how much of it is gone. That realization changed how I thought about fear. Fear wasn't the enemy, it was information. It was showing me where I was settling, where I was choosing comfort over honesty, where I was waiting instead of deciding. I didn't suddenly become fearless. I just stopped using fear as an excuse to stay stuck. I realized that drifting is still a decision. Choosing not to choose is still choosing. And every day I stayed on autopilot, I was reinforcing a life I didn't feel connected to. Once I saw that clearly, continuing felt heavier than changing. So I made a quiet promise to myself, not to have everything figured out, not to take some huge leap just for the sake of it, but to stop ignoring that feeling, to question routines instead of blindly accepting them, to be honest about what drained me and what gave me energy. That alone shifted something. Life didn't suddenly become easy, but it felt real again. I felt present, engaged, like I was actually participating instead of just reacting. And that feeling, subtle as it was, meant more to me than comfort ever did. If you're watching this and something about it feels familiar, I don't think that's random. That quiet discomfort isn't something to drown out with noise or distraction. It's a signal, one that asks you to pay attention before time makes the decision for you. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need certainty. You just need awareness and the courage to listen to it. Because one day you wake up like I did and you realize the scariest thing isn't that life is hard. It's that you might sleepwalk through it if you're not careful.